Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. We've got a new signing to talk about and so much more. Yes, it was meant to be a day off today in case you were wondering. Tottenham did their thing and it wasn't entirely a day off. But that's fine, I'd rather that a new signing came in through the door because look, how many years were we used to having signings that arrived way into the summer, deep into either pre-season or even after the season had begun. So quite frankly, certainly not going to be funny about someone being announced on June the 27th. It's a whole new world with Spurs. I mean, not quite where we were at last summer when there were signings galore coming in before pre-season had even kind of kicked off. But this is still, it's better than it was. So Spurs have a new goalkeeper, Guglielmo Vicario. I'm told that the second G is silent. That's what the Italian people tell me. Obviously, I'm still waiting to hear him pronounce it himself. I'm sure they'll get him to do it in some kind of little video. We shall see what happens with Guglielmo Vicario. Contract, and I don't know why I did such a ropey Italian accent. I can't just say it normally. So he signed a contract until 2028. And he will wear the number 13 shirt. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of people were expecting either they wouldn't announce his shirt number while they waited to see what happened with Hugo Lloris, or that maybe some people thought it would just be Hugo's number after 11 years would be ripped out of his hands and handed to the new guy. I don't think that was probably ever going to be the case. But I should point out that Vicario wore the number 13 shirt at Empoli for the last 2 seasons. So it is a number he's well aware of and very familiar with. And obviously Hugo Lloris is still at the club. Unless something happens in the next 4 days when pre-season begins on Saturday, Hugo, I'd imagine he would be one of the first bunch back because he was a non-international, which is strange to say. We're so used to him being with France, but obviously he retired from international football. So, yeah. He's got the number 1 shirt. And interestingly, Guesty pointed out to me before I came on this, if you're not aware who Guesty is, Rob Guest, I do the podcast Golden Guest Talk Tottenham with him. Guesty pointed out to me that Destiny Udogie wears the number 13 shirt at Udinese. So I wonder whether he would have hoped that he was going to get that when he arrived at Spurs. So obviously, although Spurs have actually announced his number 13, you never know. There could be a switch around if Lloris were to move on quite quickly. The main issue that comes with changing shirt numbers, as I'm sure you're aware, is people that buy the shirts and obviously having to then change the number and the pain in the backside that is and refunds and things like that. What I would say is maybe, I know some people will buy goalkeeper shirts and it's actually a very snazzy number this season. You would probably argue that maybe less people buy goalkeeper shirts than they do outfield player shirts, and maybe it'd be less of a financial hit if anyone to change their number. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying that if that were to be the case, it would probably be easier than changing an outfield player's number. Lots of photos I've noticed already in our system at work of Guglielmo going through his Guglielmo. I'm going to murder it every time I say it, whatever. Lots of Vicario doing his various bits and pieces, the medical. I'm sure this means we're going to get a big behind-the-scenes video from Spurs if they've already got photos of the medical and everything. But yeah, very good signing. I'm not going to go into details about him really because we did all of that in the last video. If you didn't watch the last video, please do go back and watch it because I do speak at length about Vicario. Talking about length, just to say, I'm sorry about the last video. I completely forgot with this new light that I have attached to the phone that my daughter got me. It's a slightly different setup, so the camera is actually a little bit closer. It's all technical rubbish, and you know these are not technical videos. Essentially, the stand is a little bit closer to me, or the thing that you stick the phone on. But I forgot that completely last week. So you ended up with this very close-up video of me. And I apologise if it put anyone off their food or whatever they might have been eating while watching it. I was very in your face. And do you know what? I didn't even realise. Actually, no, I tell a lie. There was one point when I was doing a bit of this hand gesturing and I was like, I can't even see my hands. That's unusual. I'm sure I see my hands when I'm doing like gesturing about stuff. And it was only after though when I actually uploaded it, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm so close to the camera. So it has been moved a respectful distance. You are not right in my face, which is definitely a good thing for all of you, especially as it's quite hot right now and you do not want a sweaty man right in your face. That sounded way weirder than I wanted it to sound. So anyway, back to Vicario. What's quite interesting, I noticed these quotes just before I came on. His father, Michel, speaking to Messaggero. Sorry, I'm actually doing Italian Duolingo. I've been doing it for over a year. You'd think I'd be better with pronunciation of Italian words. Messaggero Veneto. Speaking to them, his father explained various little bits and pieces. It was actually a nice little interview. Really good get by them to speak to him. I think he's a doctor, his father. He explained that Postecoglou has had a video call with him already. It's one of those, isn't it, where it kind of clearly is a player that Postecoglou liked as well. I'll read the quote, so I don't need to say it. The dad can say it. Vicario Senior says, a week ago he had a video call with his new coach, Ange Postecoglou. They spoke in English and the coach told him that he had chosen him because Guglielmo worked his way up just like him. He had chosen him. Just little words there. The coach was then impressed to see that the boy already knows English. In January, 2 other English clubs had come forward, Newcastle and Nottingham Forest, but Empoli wanted to postpone everything until the summer. And he says other little bits about him. My son has taken many steps in recent years. Now he has to take another one. I think that in Empoli he found all the right components to grow. His self-esteem has increased. His leadership. And he said something in another little bit that I haven't written down about how he feels like his personality has started to really show in the last couple of years as his confidence was always there, but now his personality is shown through. And he actually also mentioned that he's not going to be alone in London either. He's got a cousin, apparently, Vicario, who lives or has lived in London for a few years. So, yeah, family here. Obviously the rest of the family will be visiting a fair bit by the sounds of the interview. Excuse me. But obviously a key thing in there is Postecoglou explained to him why he chose him. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure he would have liked David Raya as well. But ultimately, the fee was seen as unrealistic, and still interesting that no other club has yet gone in. They may well do for Ryan. I'm sure they will because he's a very talented player, goalkeeper. But obviously, no one else particularly liked that price, and it could be that Spurs walking away means Brentford have to lower their price, and someone does get him for a good price in the end. But certainly, Spurs seem to be very happy with Vicario, and it sounds like Postecoglou as well. And obviously the fact that they were able to have the conversation in English is a good sign as well. Empoli have just done a little goodbye video of him, which I'm not going to watch now, don't worry. But it just always like to keep these little things popping up because I'm technically waiting for his first words, which should probably appear at some point. Not that it'll really mean much to people because I'm sure you'll see them on the website anyway. But it's just sometimes it's little between the lines things that you can read from them that are always quite interesting. For me, it'll be to see how he talks about Hugo Lloris and if he mentions him and things like that. So there you go. Done, dusted, signing number one of a few, I'd say a fair few. Personally, I'd be surprised if there's not 5 summer signings. That's what I reckon. But obviously, also dependent on outgoings, because sometimes someone unexpected might go and you have to bring in someone else to replace them in that position. So, yeah, we shall see. So that's the good thing. New signing, I think that it was reportedly around 19 million euros, I think was the price, which is about, 16.2? I can't remember the exact figure, something like that. So, yes, a very good deal for someone that they think is going to be their long-term number one now. Looking forward to, hopefully, if his English is good, that means I can interview him out in Australia with the other chaps that are coming out there on the tour. So, that'd be good. And also, of course, get to see him in action in those 3 games in Perth, Bangkok and Singapore. So, yes, very much looking forward to that. Right, that's Vicario. We don't need to. I will mention him briefly later on another subject, but ultimately, as I said, last video had loads about him, so probably don't need to go on too much about the 26-year-old Italian. What we probably do need to speak about is Harry Kane. This was probably the biggest stuff that happened today on my day off. I'm also off tomorrow, so other stuff may happen. I'm going to see Indiana Jones tomorrow, which I'm very excited about. As you can probably tell, it starts to get a little giddy like a schoolboy. If you know that, that's actually a kind of a quote, a slightly paraphrased quote from one of the Indiana Jones movies. It was not meant. That was absolutely accidental as well. Harry Kane. So, if you didn't see it early today, I think it was David Ornstein from The Athletic broke the news that Bayern Munich had made a written offer to Spurs for Harry Kane worth €70 million, which is £60 million, plus add-ons. Obviously, that's clearly not going to be enough to get the ball rolling with Spurs whatsoever. Spurs very quickly making it very clear that they would immediately reject a bid for Harry Kane should they receive one. Obviously indicating that they're trying to claim that no such offer has arrived for Harry Kane, but you would think with the amount of noise that's come from Germany about it that certainly one is there either in the works or has arrived, or sometimes they like to get around things I've explained this before, the technicalities, the words, the way things are said, whether it was actually a written offer or whether it was a verbal offer or whether it was whatever, however it arrived. David Ornstein is a fantastic journalist, and I have no cause to doubt him if he says that there was an offer that went in. Like I say, Spurs claim otherwise, but, such is life, such is football and reporting, and people denying things and all of that, which we'll come to in a little bit as well. I've got some more on that on a different subject. But I do find this whole topic of Harry Kane and Bayern Munich fascinating for so many reasons. Like I say, Spurs very much making it clear that he's not for sale, they've got no intention of selling this summer, and that they will immediately reject any bid that comes in. Of course, you could quite rightly also say, well, you would say that because you want the best deal possible. And, if someone came in with a ridiculous bid that would absolutely turn Spurs' head to actually say, well, okay, can we actually do enough with this? Then maybe that happens. But it's going to have to be a lot more than £60 million. Even with a year left, and you've heard me say this so many times, it's not worth it. This is a funny thing. I've had people saying to me, Daniel Levy is a businessman. No way does he pass up money for someone he will lose for free next summer. But then I'll also have people saying, criticising the fact that of him not taking the money and how stupid that is, apparently. Which kind of well, which is it? It's quite awkward. Look, don't get me wrong. I do think that Daniel Levy should have made a much better Tottenham Hotspur for Harry Kane to have succeeded in. 100%. Mistakes have been made. But yeah, I just find it quite interesting, the very diverse reactions to the suggestion that Spurs do not want to sell Harry Kane. It's quite interesting. And I just wonder, little things like with Maddison, James Maddison, who we're going to speak about a little bit later, surely you sell him the move to Spurs with the fact that he is linking up with his England captain, Harry Kane, and he's providing the ammunition for Harry Kane to score from. It's the potential for a fantastic partnership. It really is. It could be superb. And also, I guess, what message does it send to the other players if they were to sell him? Essentially, yeah, go on, you need to go if you're going to win trophies. That's kind of what it says. It's just, I can see all angles. I can see those that say he's done enough for you, you should allow him to leave if that's what you want. I get that, but it's also, I can also see the huge gaping chasm that Harry Kane leaves if he were to leave the club. I still maintain I don't think you can replace him adequately with that sort of money. And even if you spend huge money, I mean, Maddison, will be part of let me rephrase that before I ended up saying something that could be taken out of context in the wrong way. James Maddison, you could suggest, could be used in a way that would form part of what Harry Kane produces, if you see what I mean, the more playmaking aspect of it. But that is obviously just one small part of what Harry Kane brings to the team. And personally, I think you'd probably more want to see how Maddison and Kane operate together. And actually, on that point about saying players need to leave the club to win things, obviously the last time Spurs won something was the Carabao Cup, and immediately within a couple of months, Berbatov and Keane left that transfer window. So even winning trophies does not ensure people will stick around. Yeah, but do you know what fascinates me the most about it all is the fact that Bayern would not be getting to this stage and the noise around it, and the suggestion that, you know, they've put in a bid, if that's what's being said, or some suggestions they're going to put in another improved bid. They would not be at this stage, you would think, unless they'd had some suggestion that Harry Kane was open to the move. And that seems to be the indication from Germany, that he has, you know, indicated that he would be happy to move to Bayern Munich, which is the thing that I probably find more fascinating out of any of this. You're probably thinking, what a weirdo, but it is. Because, I mean, actually, I think I saw one German report actually indicating he'd agreed terms in principle, personal terms in principle with Bayern, which is obviously is a big thing in itself. That's, look, the plus side for Kane. If I'm looking at it as Harry Kane, definite plus side. Bayern are a huge club, magnificent club, great support, fantastic squad. You could win trophies galore there, and probably with Harry Kane in the side, yeah, you could probably win the Champions League. I think he's, you know, he elevates any team he goes into, absolutely. But the other side of it for me, I just find that a little bit strange, is it's almost like, in terms of the world game and brand Kane, which clearly has been trying to build around Harry Kane, he wouldn't exactly be front and centre anymore. And don't get me wrong, in Europe, in the Champions League, of course he would. But I just feel like, look, the Bundesliga is a terrific league. It's a really good league. I enjoy watching it when I get the chance to watch it. It's probably the closest you'll find in terms of the similarities to the Premier League. However, if I'm not mistaken, I would say it hasn't got the worldwide audience that the Premier League has, or those who watch, let's say, Real Madrid and Barcelona. So, with that in mind, probably from just purely a brand perspective, and I know this is a very cold, calculating business way to look at it, but for a man, and you know, you'll notice they're really trying to build his brand as like the Mbappes, the Ronaldos, the Messis. That's what's been trying to be built around him. You know, he's English speaking, so you've got that. You can appeal to the American audience, and it's no coincidence that he's been on, you know, Jimmy Fallon show, Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. Is it Late Night Jimmy Fallon Tonight Show? Oh my goodness, I watched so many of them. I forgot all their names merged together. He's been on Jimmy Fallon's show. Good Morning America, he's been on there as well. And obviously there's this whole kind of narrative about his dreams of being an NFL kicker. It's almost like a second career when he's done with our version of football. How achievable that is a whole other subject. But, you know, I just find it really interesting how Bayern would fit into that major packaging, branding idea. Because... yeah, I mean, from what I'm told, they are building a base in the US, and obviously when it comes to NFL, Germans absolutely adore NFL as well. And one of those they're obviously hosting NFL games as well. And maybe the thinking is that Harry Kane could drive that American invasion, as it were, and become the face of that. So maybe, but I just feel like the bulk of people are probably then, if he were to move to Bayern Munich, only likely to see Harry Kane when he plays for England or in Champions League matches. The bulk of people. And I'm not saying people don't watch the Bundesliga. Please do not get me wrong. I know a lot of people watch the Bundesliga, but I think as a global audience, I would imagine that the Premier League is far, far bigger. I hope this doesn't get taken as the Gold, like, kind of just. I was going to say a bad word there. Alistair Gold, is not a fan of the Bundesliga, thinks it's rubbish, but absolutely opposite. I really like the Bundesliga. Used to always watch. Do you remember there were the was it ITV4 used to do the highlights? I used to be obsessive about watching them every single time. But yeah, anyway, weird tangent there. But yeah, I don't think it can be argued that the Premier League is a bigger league, and I think the bulk of the world probably don't watch as many Bundesliga matches as they do Premier League matches. Or, for instance, maybe Jude Bellingham now will be seen by a slightly wider audience than he was when he was playing for Dortmund. People could argue the difference between Dortmund and Bayern. Maybe the audience is there, but I just find this a fascinating one. That Harry Kane 2 years ago was making it very publicly clear that he had absolutely no intention of moving abroad, no interest in it whatsoever. And now we're seeing a team that I think we probably would have been quite surprised to see him linked with, and obviously who have serious designs on, of signing him. My feeling is they're just not going to get anywhere with Spurs. That's my feeling on it. That's the sense I get right now. Like I say, unless there's a ridiculous bid, and bearing in mind, he has only got 12 months left in his contract. And this is the other thing about Harry Kane as well for me, is, again, putting myself into his shoes, which, I absolutely do not deserve to be in his shoes for a second, but I'm going to try to. If I'm Harry Kane, I almost would rather just think, why don't I just sit it out for 12 months? Might enjoy my football under Postecoglou, might score a hell of a lot of goals, might get a little bit closer to Shearer's record. And in 12 months' time, I can go wherever I want. If I could choose to stay at Spurs, or I could go anywhere. I could go to Man U if they come in. Man City might have sold Haaland to Real Madrid. I could maybe go to Chelsea and link up with Pochettino, as much as that disturbs me. I could go to Real Madrid. There are so many more options. Well, there's every option available to him in a year's time, which is just, it doesn't make any real sense to me, this one. Other than the fact that, of course, Bayern are a terrific club that win lots of trophies. He would tick that off his CV. And I do think he would have a serious run at the Champions League as well with them. But there are so many other reasons why if I were him, I would wait. And I know people will say, well, you're reporting Spurs. Of course you want to see him play week in, week out for Spurs. Yes, I do. 100%. But trying to be objective in it, I still don't quite see it makes the same sense as I think some people are trying to make out it does. But hey, we'll find out quite swiftly, really, just how much Harry Kane does want to move to Bayern Munich, because if he really wants it, he can agitate for the move. He could come out with a statement publicly. He could put in a transfer request, I guess. They're strange things, those transfer requests. That's a whole other video thing, but they're not quite as simple as they really sound, transfer requests. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. So we see what happens next, because I just feel like unless they put in a silly offer, they're not even going to get Spurs to the table. And Spurs are just like, nope, we're not selling him. Like, la 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 kind of thing. And it's the effect on what that has with Harry Kane. And does it make him, react in a, I don't get the impression with Harry Kane that he's someone that kicks off and would agitate for a move. I think we saw this with City, which was probably, let's be honest, the big chance for him. He would have been their Haaland, and he would have gone on and probably won many, many, many trophies and scored many, many goals. But yet, even then, did not do anything publicly to agitate for the move. So I would find it strange if he did it now. The only thing you could argue is that Spurs are an even worse state, or were last season, having finished 8th, and obviously don't have any form of European football next season. I'm intrigued to see the dynamic with Postecoglou, any conversations they've had or do have. It's a difficult one because Kane obviously has gone off on a holiday now. He'll return with the internationals come back on the 12th of July, a few days before they head off to Perth for the tour. So, yeah, it's a whole fascinating bundle. I've been that's the beauty of being able to be off today and watch it unfold rather than have to really dig in and report and write about it. It's just kind of look at it all from a slightly different viewpoint. And maybe it's a way of it being public, of drawing out a bid from another club, maybe a Real Madrid, possibly, if nothing seems to be going with Mbappe. And obviously, look, we spoke about the Alan Shearer record there as well. I don't think anyone believes that Harry Kane's entire purpose in life is to become the all-time Premier League top scorer. Like many people have said, I'm sure that he could go away to another country for a couple of years and then come back and still achieve that. I don't think that's out of the question. It just seems, for a guy who quite publicly said he had no interest in moving abroad. I was going to say something must have changed, but then I guess Spurs have changed. They've got worse. Maybe that makes you sit down and reevaluate your future and where you want to go. But yeah. Again, if I'm him, he's not old. He turns 30 next month, I think it is. He's got the time to see what next season brings and then make a full decision on his future and where he goes. At 30 years old next summer, technically 31 later in the summer, every club in the world on a free transfer would look at Harry Kane and think, why not? So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. The feeling is in Germany that Spurs are going to get nowhere near this figure people keep using of 100 million euros, that Spurs would start to think about it. Difficult to say. Like I say, unless Harry Kane did something publicly, but even then that might just further entrench Spurs and Levy. I don't know. It's tough to see him taking a cut price deal on, let's be honest, the star of Tottenham Hotspur, the biggest asset they have, the best player they have, I was going to say biggest star. Does Sonny technically, with his massive appeal across Asia, maybe make him a bigger? So it's a difficult one. Because I guess Harry Kane is world. I think they're both pretty world renowned players. But definitely, Harry Kane is probably seen as the crown jewel of the Tottenham crown. if you know what I mean. That was terrible. That made no real sense whatsoever. But it's just so difficult to replace. He really is. He really, really is. I've just seen it. Andrea Pirlo has joined Sampdoria as their manager in Serie B. That's an interesting one. Sorry. I got so excited about Harry Kane. I'm going to have a drink. I'm actually going to have a drink. Spurs glass as well, which I've had for many years, as you can probably tell, because the Spurs badge is peeling off. Excuse me for the slurping and all that, but otherwise I know that's going to go on for ages. It probably still will. So yeah, Harry Kane. We'll see how that develops over the next couple of days. Oh my goodness, this is not helpful. Yeah, I'm choking on the fact that Harry Kane might leave Tottenham Hotspur. Hopefully he won't, but sorry, the perils of doing these one-take long videos is at any point my throat could decide it doesn't want to play ball. And it's now making me sweat. Not my throat, but you know what I mean. So, Harry Kane. Let's see what happens. Let's see what the next few days bring. My hope, being completely subjective, honestly. It's a day off and my brain feels even more knackered than it does on a working day. Personally, I would love us to, within a couple of days, find out, hear from out of Germany, Bayern have decided it's just not possible. They'll try again in January or next summer. because it's one of those. I mean, please do tell me in the comments. Would you be happier to see Harry Kane go abroad? I'm sure people would. That's just probably a bit of a no-brainer question to ask that. But personally, I think if you knew he was probably going next summer on a free, maybe that's the better question. Would you personally have one more year of Harry Kane and him maybe leave on a free next year, or let him go now and take the money? It's an interesting one. As I said before, I think Spurs have a better chance of getting in the Champions League and achieving big things next season with him. So I don't really think the money aspect. I think the money aspect probably almost balances out. But yeah, so that's Harry Kane. There's probably not too much more I can say on that. And like I say, we'll see how things develop. Spurs very much saying no way, no way. And obviously we'll eventually find out whether that is just a bargaining stance or whether they truly mean it. I would say in previous years they've meant it. The 12 months being left on the contract brings a slightly different look to things or a dynamic to things, but ultimately he's a player that cost them nothing to begin with, other than the academy fees it would have cost to create him. Sounds like he was created in a lab or something, but then you probably would have made that back in maybe, I was going to say, not loan fees, because you probably wouldn't have had loan fees at that stage, at that age of his development stage of his development. So probably would have been more likely his wages being paid. Yeah, we'll see. It's one of those things we can speculate until the cows come home, but there's different sides to this. There's Spurs not budging. Bayern Munich, how high will they go? And then there's Harry Kane. What will he do? Will he actually be determined to force his way out of Spurs if that's what he wants? Or we just all wait another year. But I'd rather this didn't drag on. I'd rather if Bayern are going to grow weary, please grow weary quickly. Yeah. So that's Harry Kane. Back to more good news. Ange Postecoglou's staff was confirmed today. We got our confirmation. So you'd have heard me previously say that Ryan Mason and Chris Davies, the former Leicester City assistant manager, were coming in, and that has now been confirmed. I think I might have said, but I certainly kept hearing that Matty Wells was going to probably stay on as well, but I couldn't really get enough of that backed up to say that for definite, and that has now been confirmed, which is great. So, and obviously, as well, Mile Jedinak as well has come in. But we'll talk about him in a little. Let's go one by one here. Rob Birch as well, who we'll talk about. So, Chris Davies, if you're not aware, previously was on the coaching staff at Swansea, Liverpool, Celtic and Leicester. Long time Brendan Rodgers collaborator. So, yeah, obviously plays a certain style of football or likes a certain style of football. Knows a certain James Maddison very well and have coached and worked with him. And actually, there was a really good interview I saw today. Sky had, it must have been done presumably just in the weeks before he was appointed at Spurs. But the interview with Chris Davies, which was very good. Gives you a good idea of his philosophy and also how it meshed with Postecoglou's. Some little quotes from it. So, obviously, he and Rodgers and his team were let go in April. So, since then, Davies has been doing, just essentially topping up all of his learning about the game. He said, I went to Atalanta and Monaco. Then I came home and I did Villarreal and Benfica before going to Wolfsburg. It's about culture and mentality, right down to how they play, train and recover, and it was really invaluable. It was reassuring because I've not come back thinking that I was doing everything wrong. And he suggested that Villarreal was where he felt most at home because he said, possession-based football is my core idea. Again, fitting very well. Postecoglou there. The core idea of controlling the ball to control the game is still overall the better way to get results. There are other ways, and for different sets of players there's specificity, but for me it is still the best way. Ultimately, it is about believing it is effective. I worry when I hear people talking about its aesthetic appeal. If you do it because of an image, whenever there is difficulty, you revert to something else. You have to believe it is an effective style of football. And he had this really interesting thing. He was talking about the pause, which I'll explain, or he'll explain. What has come into the Premier League just recently is the idea of the pause. Brighton are very good at it. They pause on the ball. Previously, everyone was trained to play fast-flowing football, but they wait. In certain moments, the game becomes completely static because they have their foot on the ball. And then they will accelerate to break the press, or they'll pick the right moment. That's because they are very intentional in trying to attract pressure. They know what they're doing. Rather than just passing the ball across the back line quickly because it feels quick, they're waiting. They know that it is not the way to gain an advantage because it is not necessarily helping to break past an opponent. So that's quite interesting. Because obviously Postecoglou's way is this relentless, fast form of football. You know, how does the pause? Will Chris Davies have been trying to introduce that at Spurs or not? So I don't think I actually said that. So Chris Davies has actually technically, his title is, I've got it here, Senior Assistant Coach. So he is the number 2. It just makes me think of Austin Powers. So silly. So he comes in as the number 2, as the second in command, as it were, which is quite interesting because obviously it also means that Ryan Mason was convinced to stick around to not be the second in command. Because while Chris Davies is the senior assistant coach, Ryan Mason is assistant coach, Matt Wells is assistant coach, and so is Jedinak as well. So, obviously, we know plenty about Mason and Wells, very talented young coaches. Wells obviously followed Scott Parker around a few of his clubs and obviously helped out Mason towards the end of the season. And we know all about Ryan Mason. We don't need to discuss his merits and things like that. The interesting one, obviously, is Jedinak. So, you probably would, if you don't, the name doesn't immediately remind you of who he is. Probably have a look at a photo of him. He's got his cracking beard. Looks a bit like Kratos from God of War. Obviously with hair on top. He was, interestingly, if you're thinking, well, what's the link there? Is it just because he's Australian? Well, he was also the captain of Australia when the manager was a certain Ange Postecoglou. So he will be very, very aware of exactly what a Postecoglou team is meant to do, how it's meant to operate, and the best ways to, I guess, put that across to other players. You know, he's lived the experience. If anyone is able to put the ideas across, it's a former player. Obviously, played for Palace, played for Villa, and he'd been a youth coach and a loan development coach at Aston Villa. And he, for me, he feels a bit like the Harry Kane appointment at Celtic for Postecoglou. If you're not aware, there's some of you may be thinking, he's got no coaches that he's worked with before. That's kind of what he does. He went into Celtic on his own as well. There's some suggestion that he tried to get a few of the Celtic coaching staff to come with. We spoke about John Kennedy and Gavin Strachan, and I've forgotten his name. There was a chap I saw a couple of days ago that they also spoke to, who's ended up staying at FC Tokyo as their manager. But with Postecoglou, you almost get the sense that he actually does prefer to work with new coaches. Honestly, just read the reams of stuff that he said about working with coaches. He loves to give coaches an opportunity, young coaches. Obviously, this is a big one for Jedinak. It's his first senior coaching role. And obviously, Mason, you've got a lot of experience there. You know, that's when you look at it, you've got Mason, Wells and Davies, who are very, very experienced, despite their age. Even Mason now, Mason's been working for 6 years as a coach, but obviously now has been working for 2 years as a Premier League first-team coach. Matthew Wells has done similar, if not, well, he'll have done more, actually. And obviously, Davies comes in with a wealth of experience. And for Jedinak, he's kind of like sounds weird to say new kid on the block when he's got a massive beard and clearly is not a kid. But I think that's a really strong kind of outfield coaching team there. and all with that similar ethos of playing good football. Matty Wells and Ryan Mason really believe in that as well. Jedinak, like I say, will no doubt bring the Postecoglou way with him. And now it's the case of they'll all be there on July the 1st to work with Postecoglou from the first day of pre-season. And I think it's a really interesting coaching staff. It's a really young, vibrant coaching staff. And haven't forgotten as well, the goalkeeping coach, Rob Birch, who you might remember, those of you with long memories, used to actually be a Spurs player. He kind of came through the academy, and he actually was an academy coach for a few years as well, until 2019. And he's been elsewhere coaching as well. He's got good experience. FA, Fulham, Bournemouth, Club Brugge. I feel like he's followed Scott Parker as well. So he and Matty Wells, actually Mason and Wells will know Rob Birch very well. This is his, returns to the club as first team goalkeeping coach. So yeah, that's again another young but experienced coach. It's got the potential to be very exciting. Again, you may well feel that there's star players with egos might look at these kind of younger coaches and think, well, what do you know? But I get the impression Postecoglou will not allow that. He is the father figure type. Reading his stuff, and I think maybe it was within some of the quotes I read the other day, he will very much, what he does is he says to his coaches, this is what I want. This is the idea of how I want you to do it. Now you go off and make it happen in your own way. I'll back you 100% what you want to do, but make it happen so the result is this, exactly what I want to happen. So anyone that steps out of line is going to have big Ange on their case. And obviously, we spoke about Harry Kane. He will know Mason, Wells and Birch himself very well as well. So, the one that we don't have an update yet on is Gianni Vio. I presumed that when that announcement went out and there was no Vio mentioned, that was that, and he was not going to be part of it. But certainly the sense from the club is that there's just no update as of yet with him. That may mean many different things. It may mean that simply, if you're not aware, Gianni Vio is a bit of kind of like a freelance coach. He doesn't really go around with coaching staff, as in he doesn't go from club to club with a set bunch, a gang, as it were. He will often pop up, like you do the bat signal. Maybe there's a VO signal they put up, and he arrives to bring his beautiful set pieces. It's thousands of set pieces. And I guess maybe it's a case now of whether Postecoglou wants his services. And, clearly the guy is very talented, because that was one of the few success stories of last season was the set pieces. And maybe also whether VO wants to stick around and help in the new environment, and how it all syncs in together with what they're trying to do. I think we'll find out within the next probably week or so exactly what's happening with Gianni Vio. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting, that I kind of went with the thought that he'd gone, but the sense coming out of the club was not so much that, it was more, well, there's not actually an update yet on whether he is staying or not. So yeah, keep an eye on that one. But yeah, it's a good setup. I like it. Now, that means nothing whatsoever, but I just think with a new era, kind of a fresh, young outlook to it as well. I love the fact that Postecoglou works with kind of young people, gives them opportunities, and again, it all leads to this potential exciting football that we're going to get. Hopefully as quickly as possible, because it's going to be a rocky start and we need to have some patience, myself included, with my reporting, which is going to be interesting to see whether I'm, true to my word in what I'm suggesting to the fans, or everyone, or Postecoglou is suggesting to the fans, to be honest. What else we've got to talk about? Fabio Paratici. So Fabio Paratici, you might have seen me, I broke the news yesterday about Fabio Paratici. Let's be honest, one of the worst kept secrets in football, that Fabio Paratici is still involved to a degree at Spurs. It's been one of those that I've known for a while, but you know my way of doing things is that I always want to get it backed up by further sources. I don't go with stuff that I only have one source on. I like to get it confirmed by multiple sources to make sure that it is absolutely true and it's not just taking a punt at something. And yesterday I got a very good, actually I got a second and third source on it. So what it is he is helping out on a consultancy level, on a consultancy basis with Tottenham Hotspur. Again, like I say, it's not going to be a shock to probably most people. But yeah, it was nice. I've got some few interesting ones in recent weeks. Obviously, we broke the Mason news. Paratici yesterday, Steinson the other day. Although, to be fair, that was an interesting one because I published my story, and I think Sammy Mockbell from the Daily Mail tweeted it, and it was such a similar time. Presumably, he'd also written a story, but then later appeared on the Mail. I think we both got there on that one. And then the Postecoglou transfer meeting. Yeah, there's been some interesting kind of juicy stuff coming out that I've been able to get second sources on quite quickly, which has been quite nice. Sometimes it's easier said than done. As you can imagine. But hey, it's been the way was trained as a journalist. Like I say, I come up from the news way of doing things before I became a sports reporter. And obviously when you're in news and talking about crime and death and things like that, you have to get everything second source. And I think I've brought that into football. So it sometimes may mean that transfers and things like that, sometimes it can take a little bit longer, and other people will get their stuff out there first. And that's not to say they haven't second sourced it. They may just have very good contacts as well. But yeah, it can be a little bit slow. But hopefully it means that if I'm saying it, it means there's definitely something in it as well. So yeah, that went in a strange diversion, but you know what I mean. But yeah, weirdly, when it comes to it's been a good few weeks though in that sort of sense, and a few days. But yeah, Paratici. I go way off topic. Fabio Paratici. So, if you weren't aware, if you've been living in a cave somewhere, Fabio Paratici resigned as Tottenham's managing director of football back in April. He had a 30-month ban from the Italian Football Federation, which was extended globally by FIFA. But what the crucial element is that FIFA later lifted a little part of his ban through an appeal, and that lifting allows him to undertake in consultancy for clubs, and that is essentially the little door that opened. We can argue till the cows come home. I've used that expression twice now. I don't know why I'm talking about cows. But we can obviously discuss the look of it, the public perception of it, bearing in mind everything that's kind of happened in the background and still happening with Fabio Paratici. Look, very quick potted history if you're not aware exactly what happened with Fabio Paratici and how he came to be at Spurs and what happened next. So he arrived, 50 years old, Fabio Paratici, arrived in the summer of 2021 after having left Juventus already. Spent more than a decade at the Serie A club. Daniel Levy had coveted him for years. Ended up bringing him in that summer. That amazing summer that brought us Nuno as well. You can have differing views on his transfers. I'd probably say that's a difficult one. Because you've got Romero, obviously has done very well since. Kulusevski, Bentancur, fantastic signings. Emerson has proven to end up being a good signing as well, especially now in the Postecoglou system, should really work very well within that. Well, there's many others. We can talk about them. There's a few young players still to prove themselves as well, but Bissouma's another good player as well. I'm sure he'll come very good. And Richarlison eventually, you'd hope as well. But anyway, I digress. Joined in 2021. However, within the space of less than 2 years, he had to step down. And the reason for that is it's essentially in the wake of all the investigations of what happened during the years where he was at Juventus, and obviously that 30-month ban. So if you haven't seen it, Juventus were accused of, the claim was they were fixing balance sheets by artificial gains from club transfers, was the official way it was termed. And following the Italian Football Federation's investigation into the club, Paratici was handed the longest ban out of all the executives. I think it was 11. There were 11 charged former and current Juventus executives, and he got 30-month ban, which was then, like I say, extended by FIFA. So he then lost his appeal against that in April in front of the Italian court, and he resigned. And if you remember this statement from the time, Daniel Levy said, "This has been a stressful time for Fabio and his family. We want to ensure that we allowed for due process to be followed. Fabio is a man who lives and breathes football. We wish him well. As outlined in our year-end results, we started several months ago to restructure our football operations, and last week announced the appointment of Scott Munn as Chief Football Officer to head up all the departments. We shall continue to strengthen our football functions over the coming months." So there was that. And then there's other stuff going on as well. There's also an Italian court case which looks at Juventus as part of the Prisma investigation. That was started by the Turin prosecutor's office in looking into Serie A club. A preliminary hearing into that case was postponed, I understand, until October the 26th. So that's something else that's in the pipeline. And also, I need to check out kind of what happened with this. But certainly, I know that UEFA way back in December said that the club financial control body First Chamber had opened an investigation into Juventus, and this is quotes, "on the alleged financial violations that were recently made public as a result of the proceedings led by the Italian Companies and Exchange Commission and the public prosecutor in Turin." So yes, so there's still a lot buzzing around Fabio Paratici, but in the days after his resignation, FIFA reduced some elements of his global extension, which allowed him to return to football activity at a reduced capacity. And this was a statement from his lawyers, essentially on his behalf at the time when that appeal came through. "FIFA has upheld the appeal presented by Fabio Paratici against the provision of the FIFA Disciplinary Committee, which in extending the temporary inhibition imposed by the Italian Football Federation worldwide, extended it to a ban on taking part in any activity linked to football. Paratici, assisted before FIFA by a team of lawyers made up by Paolo Lombardi, Luca Pastori and Ian Lang, will therefore be able to continue working in the world of football, albeit with reduced duties compared to those carried out to date, in compliance with the limits imposed by the sanction imposed by the Italian Football Federation." So in essence, all of that I just said confirmed what I said before it, that he is allowed to undertake consultation with clubs or consultancy work. I also contacted FIFA just to double check, and they confirmed that the ruling allows Paratici to do some things within the scope of the Italian Football Federation regulations. Reports in Italy actually had been claiming that he'd been doing some consultancy work for Sampdoria, funny enough, who just mentioned that have obviously brought in Pirlo as their new manager, who, interestingly, I just bing, Paratici brought him in at Juventus as well. I didn't even put that together when I first saw it. So there you go. If you needed any further example of consultancy work there, that's exactly it. But yes, from what I understand, it is not just Sampdoria, it is also Tottenham Hotspur, where he is still trying to help out with consultancy work, certainly involved in a consultancy basis, I guess, as they plug the gap between his era and whoever comes next. I guess if you look at the first 3 deals of the summer, as they are, so 3 deals, technically it's 1, but obviously we've got 2 made permanent as well. You've got Dejan Kulusevski. Let's be honest, they all 3 bear the touch of Paratici. You've got Kulusevski, obviously loan made permanent for 25.7 million. Pedro Porro's loan deal done under Paratici in January kicks in 39 million for him at the end of this month. And obviously Vicario, who you would have heard me say in the previous video, Paratici understands been a long time admirer of the keeper, along with Leonardo Gavanini, the chief scout. And it was Paratici who made inquiries about Vicario earlier this year about his availability. So yeah, it's kind of there. This is why I said about the worst kept secret, because you can kind of, probably the wrong expression to use, but his fingerprints, I guess, are on everything. That's probably not the best analogy right now. or metaphor, but you can feel his influence is probably the better way of putting it. And from what I understand, he is helping with the plans to try and rebuild the squad for Postecoglou. One of those, obviously, being James Maddison. Postecoglou is understood to be a massive kind of Maddison fan. I know Levy is also a big fan of Maddison, as is Paratici. I think it's very much from what it seems to be is that Levy is driving this deal for all parties. And you do have to wonder, especially when you hear from Vicario's father, whether James Maddison has had the Postecoglou chat yet. I would be stunned if he hasn't by this stage. It's just funny the way football works. And you do wonder, obviously his dad coming out about that. I can't remember if I said when that took place or not, and how that's, how and when that happens, and whether it's allowed. It's maybe perhaps a club would have to give permission for it. I don't know. It's a strange world, honestly. Speaking to agents, the amount of stuff that kind of does go on in the world of football is mad. It is mad. There's various things I obviously cannot say, but certainly, some of the things you'd be like, no way. Maybe one day. Maybe I'll write a book about it, or one day. Maybe not. Done books before. They are a big old chunk of your life put into them, especially when you're doing enough as it is. Back to Paratici for a moment. It's quite interesting as well that while he still has this influence from a consultancy angle, his structure obviously is being picked apart as well. And obviously we had the Greta Steinson going, who was someone that Paratici was brought in. Obviously that's appears to be Scott Munn led. Scott Munn kind of looking at the structure and starting to put what he wants to happen into place as well. And obviously Greta Steinson heading off. From what I understand, there were a few surprise reactions around the club that he was going when they were all informed among the players and the staff as well. Obviously, he had a remit that was first team and academy. There was quite a response from what I understand. He was quite certainly a good communicator, I think, with a lot of the young players and their families, their parents, their agents and everything. It'd be interesting to see kind of his legacy at the club and what kind of people made of him there. But certainly there was a surprise that he's gone after less than a year. And from my understanding, the staff were told that Scott Munn would be taking on his duties until kind of further notice. And of course, all eyes are on who this next director of football type will be. Like I said in the last video, I'm not entirely sure the title will be director of football. I'd imagine it will probably be some other fancy title that Spurs come up with. Obviously people are going to wonder, with Paratici there in the background, exactly how much influence he will continue to have. Will he pick his own kind of replacement in a way? Should he? Will that process lengthen because of his involvement? Will he want to be able to have more of a hands-on role? How much is Leonardo Gabbanini able to operate of his own accord, and how much is he still essentially, I guess, doing Paratici's bidding? It's a strange dynamic. Personally, if you're looking for my opinion on it, I kind of feel like it's a situation where maybe a clean break should have been made. It's only my personal opinion, purely from the aesthetic of it all, the look of everything that's gone on with Paratici. For Spurs to still be kind of associated maybe isn't the best look. I don't think there's any doubting that the guy is very good at his job in terms of his contacts and his ability to try and help deals get facilitated. But I just think with the noise around him, I don't know how well it reflects on Spurs. But then I guess with the absence of him and with Steinson heading out the door, maybe there was just too big a gap without any football kind of experience and knowledge there to help the club along. But then maybe you just move quicker to bring in a new director of football. I don't know. I just don't know. You'll hear me say that a lot about Tottenham if you haven't already. Mention him there, James Maddison. Of course, that's the one that I guess we'll all be looking to next in terms of transfer. It does feel like there is a growing hope, confidence, belief that it could happen. It's Spurs, so there could be a twist at any point whatsoever. And of course, as always, it comes down to this gap in the price or the valuation. And we've been here so many times. This is why even being able to say there's a growing confidence, ultimately with Tottenham, it means nothing. Because, I hate to bring it up, but Jack Grealish. I still have nightmares about the whole Jack Grealish saga. I really do. The suggestions are that the valuation difference is 60 million that Leicester have been asking for, and Spurs are looking more at 40 with add-ons. I think what's helped Spurs enormously has been the absence of Newcastle. I think Newcastle being in there, not only from the aspect of a very attractive proposition for Maddison, and obviously Champions League football, and clearly a club on the up. There was also the aspect from Leicester's point of view that they had two interested clubs and thus could push up the price or keep the value at what they kind of wanted it to be, because you could have them playing off against each other, is kind of what we're now seeing with Declan Rice with Arsenal and Man City. West Ham can stick closer to their original valuation, and it's kind of was the same with Leicester. And I do wonder now with Spurs having a clearer path. Obviously, again, bear in mind at Spurs we never count our chickens. Who knows whether another club suddenly decides, well, you know what, actually at that price I'll have a bit of that, and they suddenly come in. Whether a Chelsea or a Man U or something like that, I don't know, or whether they've got two similar players, I don't know, or someone from abroad comes in. But at the moment, Spurs have this clearer run, which should help them. And also, with Leicester having gone down, needing that money that little bit more, a compromise you'd hope should be found. It seems to be the suggestions are that the personal terms of the players not going to be an issue. I think he'll fit in superbly at Spurs. I really think he will. The thing I keep getting told is that everyone at the club loves him and wants to bring him in, and that means, Postecoglou, Levy, Paratici, Gabbanini. A lot of the players would love to see him there as well. And it's a statement signing. It is. I think for Daniel Levy, I can understand why he's kind of driving this to try and get it done, because I think even more so maybe than Richarlison last year, this is a signing that I think the fans would get excited about, and I think other clubs would say, ooh, that's a tasty signing there. Spurs have done well there. Imagine Maddison in that Postecoglou 4-3-3. Ooh, yeah, supplying the assists as well for the likes of, Sonny and Kane and Kulusevski and Richarlison. Because it'd be interesting to see. I said this in the last video, I think, that whether he, in a 4-3-3, does he play as an attacking number 8 in the 3 in the middle? Does he play up front in the 3? Is he competition, let's say, for Kulusevski? I think that's the beauty of it. He's a versatile guy. He's got a lot of talent. The key thing for Maddison is going to be steering clear of the little injuries that have hampered him a bit over the recent years. But if he can do that, he's a terrific player. And Spurs have wanted him for ages. I've said this before. They've wanted him since he was at Coventry. Then he went to Norwich. They wanted him then. Then he went to Leicester. And obviously they wanted him from Leicester. They've just never actually got the deal done. So it's time to rectify that, Tottenham Hotspur. Please push this one over the line, because I think it's genuinely an exciting signing that everyone would think, okay, fair play. But it shouldn't be the only signing. There needs to be more done. We know defence. I've said it a million times. Defence is one of the big priorities this summer. Edmund Tapsoba has been one that has been heavily linked. Spurs obviously like him. And having done my research into him, having looked at him, he sounds very much like a Postecoglou centre-back. Good pace, calm under pressure, very good with the ball. Good in the air as well. He can play on the left or right in a central pairing as well. I think he mainly plays on the right, but can play left. Certainly is equally versatile to play on either one, from what I'm told. Still a work in progress. Don't get me wrong. Burkina Faso international. He's only 24 years old. The only question I wonder about it is the price, because there seemed to be some suggestions, reports I saw that Arsenal had been interested but veered away because of the price. But then I also see other reports coming out of Germany that he could be available for 25 million. And if it's 25 million, it seems like a steal for the potential he has. He's certainly got all of the attributes to flourish under Postecoglou. If it's that price, I don't know. It's not my money, but crack on, The other one, obviously heavily linked, is Mickey van der Ven, the Wolfsburg 22-year-old. He is properly left-sided centre-back. He can also play as left-back if required. Obviously, Liverpool linked quite heavily with him. 26 million fee has been mooted for him. Apparently, he's very fast. A lot of pace for him. He did actually say last month, I'm very good at Wolfsburg, as in happy. So I don't mind staying for another year, but if I get a chance to leave, I would like to. I read everything. I have good contact with my agent, so I know what's going on. I'll see where it'll lead. Hopefully, moving to a bigger club would be nice. The Premier League, maybe, yes, who knows? And he actually was asked about Spurs' interest this week. I think it was Football International asked him. And he said, I've been forwarded it, I have seen it. So I don't know whether that's their interest or whether that's reports. I don't know. But he'll sounds like another promising, talented young player. Interesting, the real look at the Bundesliga as well. Maybe defensive-wise, like I was saying there, the pace and physicality is a closer fit. So maybe they've decided that helps the transition to the Premier League. There's also going to be a data element to it. I've said this before, that Spurs are really trying to push the use of their analytics kind of unit and improving the budget towards the data they get into it, because they've got some talented analysts from what I understand. And maybe this is as a result of that as well. So they're the two that obviously are doing the rounds. You've heard me say about Mark Gay at Palace. Incredibly talented young player, England international. Spurs absolutely adore him. I'd imagine he'd be the one they'd want above all others, but he also is the one that most clubs want, and the money is just going to be huge for him because of that. And he's got a long contract, so I just don't know whether he's actually a doable, achievable player this summer for Spurs, which is a shame because he's a terrific player. It was Gleason Bramer as well, wasn't there? He was at Torino and then he ended up going to Juventus, talking Italy, that Spurs might still be looking at him, but then I've seen some big figures for him as well. Something like, I think someone said 80 million euros I saw for him, which, as we now know, is around the 60 million mark. I think if Spurs were to go to that kind of price for a defender, you would probably definitely have to have some out the door. They've got to get him out the door anyway. I saw that Harry Winks was linked with Leicester, which is an interesting move. I think it would be a good move for Harry Winks, but I could also understand if he felt like he doesn't need to drop down to the Championship. It's one of those where you would imagine Leicester will probably come up again next season. Obviously a Premier League club, really. Recent Premier League champions, FA Cup holders. So I can see the appeal if you were going to drop down to anyone. But I just wonder, after his really good time that he had at Sampdoria second half of the season, he could probably get himself a Premier League move. Interested to see what happens with Harry Winks. Obviously only got a year left in his contract, but you would imagine you could get between maybe 5 to 10 million for him, maybe. We'll see what happens with Harry Winks and quite a few of them as well. Yeah, sorry. I thought it was more Harry Kane news breaking. I can't deal with any more Harry Kane news. It's not. It's just regurgitating of what came out of Germany earlier. Who else we got defensive wise? Clement Longley. Cannot ignore that as an option for the price. I know there's some people got very strong opinions on him. Personally, I feel as a squad player for the talk of potentially 4 or 5 million, I don't see much wrong with it. But I think there's a desire for the new players and new faces coming in the door. But again, with any foreign signing or any signing really, it may not work. It hopefully does. Like Vicario, he's got a hell of a lot of talent, a lot of potential, but as we've said in the last video, he is more than a risk than Raya. Of course he is, because David Raya has played in the Premier League. He's Premier League ready, proven. Vicario is not. That is something that he is going to have to adapt to and take on board and learn from, and hopefully he will be a big success. Surely, I say surely because this is Spurs, but you would think they will have looked at all the aspects of his game and seen that it fits the Premier League. And hopefully we'll find that out quite quickly. What other little bits of housekeeping do we need to do? Romain Mundle has gone off to Standard Liège or de Liège. No coincidence there. I think that Yaya Toure is the assistant manager. Although interesting, to be fair, the Romain Mundle stuff was bubbling away with Liège interested a fair while back, unless it had been on the books a little bit longer than that with Yaya as well, which may be the case. But yeah, good for him that he's got a familiar face there, albeit Yaya was the under-16s coach and Romain was playing in the under-21s development squad and occasionally with the first team as well. But no, good luck to him. Be interesting to see where his career takes him now and what level he can reach. Talented lad, very tricky winger, ability to play as a wing back as well. So as long as he keeps his head down, works hard, he will do well. And obviously Spurs will get compensation for it. The better he does, they'll get that little bit. Obviously, kind of went on a free because he was out of contract. But as it always is with players at that age, they get a little bit out of their work with them throughout the academy. Is it a solidarity payment? I can't remember the exact expression, but yeah, Spurs will get money for it. I think that's it for now, really. There hasn't been too much talk about the young left winger that I know Spurs are looking for, that kind of profile. Obviously, Harvey Barnes was the main one for that. Maybe when they get the Maddison deal done, that's something very, very presumptuous there. If they get the Maddison deal done, that will be something maybe they look at next. Because obviously, again, a player that would know each other's game inside out. Let's concentrate on Maddison first. It'll be interesting to see which comes first, the centre-back or Maddison. I kind of get the feeling that where we're at with Maddison now, that could suddenly move quite quickly. It's a difficult one because we kind of felt that with Jed Spence. It was one of those where talks were taking place, but as of yet, no bid had effectively gone in, and then it dragged, and it suddenly dragged, and it dragged and dragged on, despite all these kind of claims that it had been agreed. I think we had about 10 different occasions that Jed Spence did have been agreed when it hadn't. With Maddison, I do think the base involvement helps a lot. The fact that, if you're not aware, James Maddison is represented by the agency CAA Base, who have a massive influence at Spurs. They represent Postecoglou, they represent Porro, Richarlison, Sonny, of course, I cannot forget Sonny, and a whole host of young, talented players in the squad, the academy, that have only just had new contracts out in the recent years as well. There's been a real drive to kind of keep those players. So Base having that very strong relationship with Spurs, obviously would have had a good relationship with Leicester, with Maddison have been there for quite a while now. So yeah, you would imagine of deals that are, how do I put this? It'd be an easier deal to be done because of that. So fingers crossed, because it genuinely would be a player that it'd probably be one of the most exciting signings I think Spurs will have made in the last few years, to be honest with you. Because again, as with Raya, ready-made player, homegrown player as well. Spurs have missed that little bit of, I guess, an exciting homegrown attacking player. Obviously got Harry Kane, but since Delhi, it's probably the last one. I'm trying, unless I've really forgotten someone obvious. It probably is since Delhi, and I think James Maddison and Delhi are big mates, aren't they, as well? I hope Delhi gets back on track. I really hope he does. But yeah, back to James Maddison. Honestly, it'd be really, really, really good signing. So hopefully that one starts to move a little bit quicker, get him through the door, sort out the defence. You need two faces. The plan is for two new faces, but I also really need to start getting players out the door. That's been the thing we haven't heard too much about, is players heading out. Like there's Hugo Lloris. There was talk in the last couple of days that Inter Milan, if they lose Onana, actually might look at Hugo Lloris as well, which would be a big move for him. And obviously Hugo, when he does go, we'll have a chat about his legacy at Tottenham, which I do think people underrate, and just how much he's brought to the club. And I will always stress that Hugo Lloris has saved Tottenham far more points than he has given them away. Far, far, far more over the last 11 years. It's just such a huge presence behind the scenes as well. Be interesting to see where we end up having this little period where Lloris and Vicario cross over or not. Vicario, technically, as he was in Italy's Nations League squad, really would be allowed to come in on the 12th, you'd imagine. But the fact that he didn't play any minutes, whether that changes things, and he suggests, he maybe says, I'll come in early because I wasn't like I was playing games. Obviously, he was training, hasn't had a proper holiday break since before the international break. It's not really a break, is it? International period with Italy. So, we'll see what happens with that. We will. So there you go. The way things are happening and the way today has been, I'm sure this video will publish and there'll be something else major comes out straight afterwards. Like I say, another day off tomorrow. Praying that Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is going to be everything I hope it to be. I've noticed the reviews on that. There were some iffy ones when it premiered at Cannes, and I've noticed the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes like creep up, and the percentage is way higher than it was. I just get the feeling it's going to be one of these love or hate endings, and hopefully I love it, because there was good stuff in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but there was also some very iffy stuff that I didn't like. Hopefully this is a decent send-off for him, because Harrison Ford is doing some brilliant work at the moment. Sorry, I've gone properly away from Spurs. Love Shrinking. Love 1923. It just feels like he's having a real hot spot in his career right now as well. And apparently his performance is really good in this Indiana Jones. So, of course it would be. Anyway, that's a whole other... I could do a whole other videos just on movies, because you know how much I love them. But I won't, because I'll have that email from that older chap who gets very annoyed when I stop talking about Spurs. But anyway, time to head off. I've got to go and get some dinner, and then look at that, just as I'm finishing, Guglielmo Vicario's first words have dropped onto, let's just see, just in case they're there and I can read them out. I think it's a video, to be honest with you, so I might not be able to. Oh, no, there are words. Right, very quickly, just before I head off, because it's here. Sorry, if you'd already read these by the time this come out, but it might be helpful to someone. He says, yes, I'm excited to be here. It's a dream for me to be here. One of the biggest teams in England and in the Premier League. I'd like to start quickly to join my teammates, because for me, it's a big pleasure to be here, which maybe suggests he might come in earlier than the 12th. When he was told of the chance to join the Spurs, he said, I didn't believe this opportunity. I told my agent it's my first choice. I want to go to the Premier League and a big club like Spurs. For me, it's so exciting. I want to learn a lot of things because the culture of football in Italy is so different. I need to adapt quickly to my teammates, to the style of play. So many differences between Italian football and the Premier League. The fans are amazing as well. The buzz when you play well. I love this mentality. So he's really looking forward to... he actually admits, speaking to Postecoglou, not that we didn't think it happened. He said, I spoke with him and he told me the keeper is so important with his attacking mentality. He wants to dominate the game. I love this mentality. It will be a big chance for me. in terms of his hope for new season. I think we need to fight a lot. We have to take the best for the club. I don't want to make specific goals because we have to focus day by day. If we work a lot, follow the coach, I think we can reach a lot of goals. We are a big team of big players. For me, the team is amazing. And he just speaks about his journey from Serie D all the way up, of having been a youngster all the way up to Empoli, Italy, and now Spurs. I just wanted to play football, not thinking what it could be in the next years. I just think the best thing is to concentrate on the present, what you can do now, not what you will do. I concentrate on the present and I live my life, my experience, my football. I train a lot. I love to train. Now this is my dream. I want to live my dream now. Nice. It was a good interview. I like that. I shall watch the full video now, even though I've just read it out. As I said at the start, didn't mention Hugo. It may have been that he did and that it ended up not making it into the cut, maybe because Spurs think he's going to go. I don't know. I think we will expect, especially now Vicario's come in, that has kind of paved the way for Hugo to head off and get the new challenge he's after. But yeah, it's a new signing. It's exciting. Let's get new signings. More in the door, please. James Maddison would be great. A couple of defenders, young winger, and let's keep Harry Kane at Tottenham Hotspur, please. And then it could be a pretty decent window, especially if they get some of the kind of players out the door who don't need to be there in a very bloated squad. But yeah, we shall see what the coming weeks bring. I'm just looking forward to football coming back. I'm at the stage now where I'm a bit like, I really miss reporting on games. I know there's been international games, but I love the kind of the feeling of reporting and writing on a live match and also talking and interviewing players and coaches and everything afterwards. So I can't wait for the tour just to get back into all of that. Yeah, there you go. That was good timing. At least we got those quotes in there right at the end. And it'll all be saying, yeah, I've already read those. What difference does that make? But anyway, hopefully some people it was of use to. I'm going to head off now. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.